speaker, Mr. Brad Ferguson and the career trades. Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Hi guys, my name is Brad Ferguson. I'm Vice President of Ferguson Construction Company. We're located here in County Lake, Pennsylvania. If any of you know where the bowling alley is on the east side, our shop is right across the street from there. My brother and I are currently third generation owners of the business. Started by my grandfather, then taken over by my dad, and now my brother and I. So it's kind of been a family business, kind of been doing it all my life. As he said, I'm familiar with Mr. Hands. I actually had Mr. Hands as a teacher when I was here, when this was the high school before the consolidation, and now it's middle school. But Mr. Hands was my shop teacher. Took 4 years of shop, and that kind of got me more interested in what I do today, working with my hands, building things. So got some pictures I'll show you of some current projects, some past projects that we've done. I also brought in a set of plans. I got a couple copies on each side, so if you're interested in taking a look at a set of plans for a house, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So carpentry and construction. One thing I will mention, 10th grade, you will have the option at the Career Center to go into carpentry. We've been working with the carpentry program for a couple years. We've had, this will be our third year with a co-op student. So senior year, you have the opportunity to go out on co-op, where you'll go to school for the first half of the day, and the second half of the day, you come out to the job site, you work right alongside of us, and one of the nice things is you earn a paycheck whenever you're out working. So if that sounds something that might interest you, you know, getting hands-on experience and earning a little bit of money, I mean, it's a win-win. And right now we have one full-time employee that has come through the carpentry program, did co-op with us, and when he graduated high school, we hired him on full-time, and he's been working with us every day since then. So we can get into kind of the start of a construction project. Of course, you have to have a customer that is willing to build something. They want to have a set of plans. You know, when you think about the house that you want, how many of you ever thought about having a dream house? All right. You guys have some ideas on what you want in your dream house? Or you just want a big house that looks nice? Whatever it may be, you have to have a plan, and you have to have somewhere to build the house, right? So, starting with the building site, and once you have your building site, you have to create a foundation. So, this right here, this is a building site that a customer of ours had, and it was basically a wooded area where they wanted to build their house. And this is actually the building site where these plans are for, and I'll show you some more pictures along the way of how it's progressing along. So right here, first day on the job, had a machine in there kind of clearing trees out. Here's kind of the lot. I don't know if you can see very well, but we have some stakes put out into the ground where the house is going to be situated within the lot. Here you have another, this would be an addition foundation. So this customer had a small garage on site, and they wanted to expand upon that. So you can see right here, there is concrete block foundation. And then this is a little bit further along in that project where we kind of demoed a lot of the old structure, left a few walls standing, and then you can see that the foundation here, and now we have our poured concrete floor in the foundation. This is another example of what's called superior wall foundation. So these are precast concrete panels that we send a plan to the company. They have a big warehouse where they create all the panels to create whatever foundation that we need. The really interesting thing about these is they'll come in with a few trucks, depending on how big the foundation is, and a crane, and they'll set all these panels in place in less than a day. So you'll go from basically an open lot in the morning, and by the afternoon, when they're pulling out, you have a complete foundation, almost ready to pour concrete. Now, another interesting thing about this project is, how many of you are familiar with the cable bridges that have big cables that kind of hold up the bridge? Have you ever heard of that? This is kind of a similar foundation type to that. So originally, you set your foundation walls. As you see in this photo, there is scaffolding with cribbing underneath of it. And then I'm going to advance to the next one. Right here, these are styrofoam panels that go on top of that are actually a concrete form. So if you can see in this photo, in these deep pockets here, there are cables that run through that. So those cables, just like a suspension bridge, they'll hold the weight of that concrete. So this is formed ready for concrete. This is after the concrete has been poured. So this goes over the entire foundation. Once that concrete's poured, they'll come back, they'll pull these cables with a machine that pulls tension on it, and that whole floor underneath is clear span. So this particular garage, they have the ability to park vehicles on the top side of this, while the bottom side is wide open, where a lot of times you'll have support columns or posts or large beams. This way you can get a wide open floor plan. So kind of an interesting one, not one that we do often. Some scenarios, customers have existing structures that they want to demolish and rebuild. So this is a house that we tore down. You can see right here, there's a machine on top of the pile of debris. So tear the house down, we load it up into dumpsters, haul it all out. So you go from an existing house, tearing it down, and then this is the foundation prep work. So this photo here, you can see this portion, those are what we call our footers or footings. So the footers you pour first. Those are concrete, 2 foot wide, 8 to 10 inches deep. And that kind of acts as the portion that is going to hold all that weight of the house. So once you pour that footer, you see over here, then you lay, this is a concrete block foundation. You lay the block according to the plan of the house. And there is the completed foundation. After you pour the foundation, you can see, well, maybe not so much in the photo. Down in here, there is concrete wire. It's ready for concrete for the basement floor. So once you have your foundation established, then you're ready to start building up, or what we call framing. So framing is mostly working with wood. There is metal framing, but what we do is majority of wood framing. So you frame up your walls, depending on if it's a 1 or a 2-story floor. You have to put your floor system on, and as you can see in this photo here, this is a 2-story home. Once you have your second story framed up, then you can go to setting trusses. Here's a couple photos here of setting trusses. You know, this is a 1-story home. All the walls have been completed, and now we're setting trusses. Same over here in this garage. All the walls have been framed up, setting trusses. Some other framing that we do is decks. So this is actually a land dock that we created a deck over. It's a deck / dock, if you want to call it that. So depending on what you're framing, you might be framing a deck, you might be framing walls, or you might be sheeting a roof or a floor system. Here's some more examples of framing. This is an addition where we've done the walls. This section right here, this is the floor system that's going on top of those walls. So we frame up the walls. In this case, these are floor trusses. So you can see the webbing in those floor trusses. and then we put our plywood sheeting over top of that. Those lock together like a tongue and groove, so kind of like each edge locks into the other. That adds strength to it. So once you get your floor system on, then we're framing up the walls on the second story of that. And to give you a reference, this wall right here is 14 feet high. There's another picture of that. Completed the wall framing, and set trusses, sheeted the roof, and then we went back and sheeted the exterior of the building. So once you have your exterior sheeted, okay, what happens to wood when it gets wet? Rots. And in a lot of cases, before it rots, it'll swell, start giving you problems. So after we sheet the walls, then we put a house wrap on it. So the house wrap acts as a waterproofing. So right now, this is a current project, and it is currently sitting just like this. So this is good to sit once the windows are in it, the house wrap is on it. We call that the dried in phase. So right now it can get rained and snowed on, and it's going to stay dry. After you have your house wrap on, we have to put siding on. So here's an example of a project before siding and after siding. So again, you have your house wrap, your windows, so it's dry from the elements, whether it's rain, snow. You're not going to get any water inside the building. Everything outside can withstand until you get your siding on. Here's a couple more examples of siding. House wrap and windows are on. Another thing at this stage, what you have to do is, how many of you have washer dryer? Okay, what happens to the dryer when you turn it on?
Use electricity.
Use electricity, but also what you need from that dryer to the outside. Ducting, so it can vent. So if you notice here, there's a bunch of little vents here all over this house. That's something that we have to do prior to siding. That way, as we're siding, we can side around those boxes. So there are certain steps you have to take inside the house before you're ready to side the outside. So some of the things are vents from your washer dryer, your plumbing vents, whether they go through the roof or through overhangs. And then there's a completed picture of that siding. This house here, if you get a chance to look at the plans, that is the house that's on the plans there. Another siding picture here. So when we're siding, especially when we have to reach up high, we use different types of scaffolding. This picture here is called pump jack scaffold. We use quite frequently to do our siding. And this photo was taken, I think, about 3 weeks ago when it was snowing pretty well. And I don't know if you can see right here on this scaffold, that's about 2 inches of snow. That was probably within a couple hours of being up there. So sometimes we do have to work in the elements, but as long as you keep moving, you stay pretty warm and you're dressed right, it's not too bad. And there are some completed photos of that siding. Once we complete the siding of the exterior, then we move on to the interior finish. So there's a lot of different ways that people finish off the insides of their homes. This example here, there is drywall, and then we have a wood accent wall and a wood accent ceiling. In this photo here, you can see this is spray foam insulation. So on the inside of your home, before you do your interior finishes, you have to have all your electrical, plumbing, insulating complete, and then you can kind of cover that up and make it look nice. So here's a before and after of a project where you can see, you have your insulation, now you have your drywall and finished ceiling. Another example of finishing off a stair set. So in this photo, you can see we're installing the wood paneling on the side, also installing the hardwood treads up the stairs, and here you can see a finished photo of the completed stair set. Some other interior finishes that we do are bathrooms and kitchens. Here's an example of bathroom vanity with a custom backlit mirror. Here is a small portion of a kitchen with a tile backsplash and some custom cabinetry. Some other interior finishing we do are railings, stair railings, walkway railings, and this is a tongue and groove cedar ceiling. So you can kind of see a before and after on that. Another staircase photo of interior finish, and then a kitchen. And then here are some before and after job site. This house was caught on fire, had to tear it down and rebuild. So you see kind of the destruction after a fire versus when it was rebuilt and the siding complete. Here's a before and after of, again, we saw that kind of special type of foundation. This is when they're setting, they had their crane in here, the panels on their truck. They were setting the foundation that day, and this is the final step after siding and finishes. Here is the before of the smaller garage and after we added on to that. This is a land dock and deck that we built. We went around, drove steel piling down to reinforce the land dock, and then we framed and built a deck on top of it. And then this is the original photo that you saw of clearing the lot, and then this was the house mid-framing stage before the windows went in. So that's all the pictures I got for you. Any questions on anything that you saw there? Yeah.
Do you do HVAC?
We sub out our HVAC. So we also subcontract some other work that goes into the house. One of those being insulation. So the spray foam insulation you saw in that one picture, that takes specialized equipment that we hire a company that's all they do is they spray foam. They come to our jobs, they do that for us. When they're done, then we take back over. We also sub out the drywall work. Again, that's something that it's kind of a specialized area. So HVAC, insulation, and drywall, we have people do for us. It's a good question. Anyone else have questions?
So all these phases of construction just to get to the finished product, right?
Yep.
If you wouldn't have been here today, we would have done a quick review on preparation and organization. I would have guessed that there's got to be a lot
Yes.
of
So
preparation and organization.
talking about materials, there's a lot of materials that go into a house, and they have to be there in specific orders. So everything from when you start the foundation, you have all your different gravels. You have, let's see if I can go back. So here in this photo, you can see the main floor is gravel. So you want gravel underneath your concrete. You also want gravel around these footer forms. So these footer forms, we call that form a drain. So has anyone had water get into their basement? Okay, common problem in a lot of older houses. Well, just like everything else, technology evolves, building materials evolve. So we have better ways as time elapses to construct a more efficient home, you know, a drier home. So these act as a drainage system, but they also act as a form. So if you think after all these concrete blocks get backfilled and any water that seeps down along there, that's going to come down into these form drains. That's going to run like just like a pipe. They're basically a rectangle pipe. And that's going to keep your basement dry. So just for example, on this day when we were getting this ready, you have to have gravel either scheduled for delivery, or you have to haul it on site yourself. You have to have the workers there to help you get the gravel dispersed. You have to have the form and drain ready to go. And as you see here, where there's several offset steps, those take different fittings, where it's just not a straight piece, you need a corner. So you have to look at your plan and say, okay, I'm gonna need X amount of 90s, I need X amount of form and drain, we're gonna need rebar, we're gonna need gravel, we need tools to do all the work. So there is a lot of planning that goes into, you know, each day. So you think about that, then you fast forward to when you're siding or framing. Okay? A lot of the windows that you saw in that, the round windows, those are special order. So if you have that house that you know is going to be framing, you know, before you start framing, you need to be ordering your windows, especially when they are custom order windows. They can take anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks to get. So if you wait until you're ready for that window, then you order it, and then 8 to 10 weeks passes, that's 8 to 10 weeks that rain and snow and everything else is getting inside of that project, and it's also holding up progress from the next phase. So not only planning at night how much time it takes to get your homework done, or what you need to take to practice or band or whatever it may be, planning and preparing is something that you're going to need in almost any job in the future. Any other questions? Yes?
What type of schooling do you have to go to get this job?
So I went to the School of Hard Knocks, meaning I grew up doing this. So things like the Bolte Career Center in Meadville, that's a great way to get kind of introduced. You know, me myself, I grew up in a construction family, so it's kind of, I got thrown into it where, you know, if I wasn't growing up in a construction family, I probably wouldn't have the opportunity to learn and do all the things I did whenever, you know, I was as young as I was doing the things I was doing. However, there are different tech schools. There's even colleges that offer construction type degrees.
Are there any specific certifications or licenses that you need to carry to be able to do some of the jobs?
We have to carry a contractor's license, which is through the state. There's no real certifications. You do have to follow building codes, you have to get inspections, so at different phases of the project, there's inspectors that come out and make sure that everything is done properly. And if it's not done properly, then you have to go back, you have to fix it and make sure that it is in fact done the way that it should be. Any other questions?
Think about other things we've discussed for careers. Go ahead.
Wrap it, depending on the size of the house. So let me see if I can fast forward here. So for example, this one right here, it's 2 stories, real tall. So the difficult part is the spots that are up high. You can kind of see this machine right here, the green one, call that a telehandler. So that really helps speed up the process. So what we do is we put they call it a basket. It's about 8 foot wide by 4 foot. And you have someone in that telehandler controlling it, moving it. Basically, it's a giant forklift that telescopes out. And you can reach really hard to reach spots with that. So what we did here is I was in the basket while my brother was in the machine, and the house wrap comes in rolls. So you have a 10-foot roll, and say that this wall was the house. I would take the roll and I would fasten it to the house, and he would just keep driving along. I would roll out more, staple it back until we got that whole top section done. So you just basically start at one side and you just roll all the way out until you get one wall done, and then you have to move up and then do it again until you have the whole wall covered. So you can kind of see here the letters. There's a seam going right there. Whoop. And then up at the top, we had a little bit of we take the roll and we cut it down to what we need to finish. Makes it a lot easier. So instead of having a 10-foot roll, I think we ended up with about a 3-foot roll at the top, so it's a lot faster when you're using the smaller
The
rolls.
two guys with the right equipment take you half a day? Full day?
About, yeah, I would say, yeah, half a day.
Rapid.
And then when you're down low, when you have extra hands, it goes a lot faster. When you're up high, you have to take your time, make sure you're doing things safe. But
What about the whole project, from the day the customer said, hey, this is what we want to do,
So-
to the day you get paid?
that is a tough to answer question. Depending on the house, depending on the customer, depending on the material selection, and how fast the customer makes selections. So we've been on projects where, for example, the one house I showed you, it was a house fire and a rebuild. That was actually my brother's house. So he had his house burned down in late August, and just this week we were installing the kitchen flooring, and it's going to be to the point where it's ready for carpet, countertops within a few weeks. So again, he knows everything that goes into selecting, picking out, all that stuff. If we change hands, we've been on another project for over 2 years now, where it's a very large home, but the customer will make a decision, say, okay, I want this finish. Then a month later, they look at it again when it's installed and say, you know what, I don't like that, I want to redo it. So we've been in scenarios where we'll install something, the customer comes in and says, I really don't like that, I want it changed, so we have to take it all back down and then install something else. So typically I will say a house build should take anywhere from 6 to 8 months, as long as decisions are made, materials are available, and everything goes smoothly. But it can stretch out much longer than that.
How do you get paid? We're not going to ask you how much you get paid, but I know in these fields, right, you're not necessarily getting, unless you have it set up that way, to get yourself a weekly paycheck.
Right, so we do bi-weekly paychecks, but as us for the company to get paid, so let me use this house for example. When we meet with the customer that wants to build a house, we come up with a payment schedule. So we have to take a down payment to get the ball rolling, order materials, get started on the project. Then things like when the foundation is complete, we need a payment to then move on to the next phase. Once the framing is complete, we receive a payment, move on to the next phase. Once the electrical and plumbing is installed, we receive a payment, move on to the next stage. So that way it allows us to continue working with a little bit of the customer's money, where and a lot of times we have to buy all the material, pay the employees, all that stuff up front, and then when the work's complete, we get paid. So depending on the job, but typically on a new build, we'll have a payment schedule in place that way. As long as we continue working, getting everything done, they continue paying, it goes on and on until the project's done. Where if the customer doesn't want to pay, we've completed this phase, if we don't get that payment, it'll sit until you pay us, and we can move on to the next phase.
Do you come up with your own plans for your houses, or did the customer come to you with a plan?
So we have done both. We will work with our customers to design and come up with the plan that they want and love. We also have customers that have plans done. They already know what they want. They have the plans done. They bring the plans to us and say, build this, how much is it going to be? Typically, lately we've been doing more custom style. So the set of plans that are here, we worked with the customer to listen to what they want, how they want it laid out. So we were pretty heavily involved with the design of these plans that I have here today. Happens that some of our, like that project right there, the customer's brother is an architect. So they have the brother design the, well, this is a garage, and that house are on the same property. They were all designed by the customer's brother, who's an architect. So in those cases, all the planning and stuff is left to them.
So a lot of your, I mean, obviously most of your building is you're outside, or you're in, once you're dried in, you're inside the house. Computers, office, like you gotta be inside sometime doing the planning? No?
Most of the
Truck?
time for us, if we have to do any planning, stuff like that, we do it in mornings or evenings. We typically try to work at least 8 hours a day. You know, when the weather's nice, like spring to summer, sometimes we're working 12, 14 hours a day, just depending on what needs done, how the weather is. Another thing I should touch on is in certain phases of construction, the weather's a major factor. So today, how many of you think it's pretty cold outside? Okay, how about last week? You think it's cold compared to last week? Not really. So when I leave here, I'm going to a job site, I'm gonna be working outside. So last week, when it was single digits, we were inside working. So we like to be inside whenever it is cold, however we do still work outside in colder temperatures.
So you'd say that's one of your negatives? Working in the weather?
Yeah, it can be. You know, imagine you guys sitting in school, but it's 30 degrees in here. Think it's gonna make the day drag on a little bit longer? Might. But again, in the summertime, whenever it's 90 degrees, it's also not the funnest to work when it's very hot out.
All right, how about one more, how about your favorite part of the job? And then we'll give you guys a chance to look at the plans before you head out.
I would say my favorite part of the job is talking to customers, listening to what they want, and then actually making that come to reality. And, you know, talking with them after you complete a job, seeing how happy they are with the results of it, and just kind of seeing the progression where, you know, you saw the one picture where it was just a lot clear, and then we have a house there. You know, it's interesting to see the progression along the way of different jobs, and also seeing, you know, it's gratifying to see the customer really appreciate all the work that you put into it.
And then every time you drive by it,
Yep.
I built that.
Yep.
And you tell your kids, I built that. Pretty neat. Last questions, and then anybody want to come around and look at any of the pictures over here or plans over here? Go ahead. And if you don't have anything, better start thinking about something. What's this career involved? Mr. Ferguson, we appreciate it.
Yeah.